Want help to grow your business? Download BRiN, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit BRiN.ai or search the App Store today.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the latest issue of Think Global China Edition. I'm David Thomas, and today I'm joined by our good friend Ben Sun of Think China. Hi Ben.
Hi.
Now in today's show we're going to talk about e-commerce. We're going to talk about how to sell your products into China through e-commerce. We're going to look at this booming opportunity for small business. We'll look at the overview of China's e-commerce boom. We'll look at latest consumer trends in this area. We'll give an overview of e-commerce platforms that are available to SMEs. We'll look at an overview of social media platforms. We'll look at the components of your digital presence in China. We'll look at some of the must-haves you need to invest time and money into e-commerce, some do's and don'ts for your business websites, and finally we're going to look at selling your services versus selling your products online. So let's get started. Now, Ben, the first issue we need to talk about is the growth of e-commerce in China. There's been significant growth, and this has become a game changer for small business. Yeah. There's been so much change in the last couple of years. It's now possible for small business to get into the China market, which has been really difficult for them in the past. So why is this happening, and what are some of the big changes that we should be aware of?
But after that, I think Jack Ma said e-commerce in the Western world is the dessert, and in China is the main course. I think that phrase explained very well that how important that e-commerce to some of the Chinese consumers. Particularly in last year, early last year, when the cross-border e-commerce concept was introduced to the China market, that opened a great opportunity for manufacturers and even some SMEs to enter the market without worry about business certificate or the legal registration process, which I think is a great opportunity to start.
Yeah. So what are some of the sort of emerging trends in this space that we're watching?
I think the very interesting story would be if your products, as a small business, your product might already be selling to China without you even realize. There are lots of students or migrants that are around us and starting to purchase from supermarket and selling back to China. So the trends that we see is lots of Chinese consumers are actively looking for products to buy that manufactured and from overseas. So what they looking for is what, for example, Australians having every day in their supermarket, or New Zealanders, or people in the US particular.
Yeah, in fact, we've got a photograph of that, haven't we, which we might show an example of what that looks like. So
exactly.
Tell us a bit about what's in this photograph and why we should care.
This is a real photo that we took from one of the students' house. The job that the both husband and wife, that what they have, what their jobs actually is buying from supermarket, all the baby formulas, supplements, cosmetics, and they just ship back to China. Yeah. And selling through Taobao, which is one of the e-marketplaces in China.
Yeah. So in other words, it might already be happening without you realizing it.
Well, there are lots of clients came to us. The first thing we do is go to Taobao and search their brand. Yeah. And 90% of times they just already selling in China. And that could be a good indication of this. There's a demand in China, but also. You need to be aware that because your product and your product description might be translated into some different versions.
Yeah, you could lose control completely over how your product's being sold if they're doing it for you.
That's right, and some of the time your brand's domain name may be even being registered. Your trademark probably even has been done, which I'm sure you can address that in the other session.
Yes. So let's go back to this now. If you're a small business somewhere in the world and you're thinking about the China market to start going through the e-commerce space, how is China emerging as an opportunity? What are some of the key things you should be looking out for?
you need to understand who is buying.
Right.
So that's very important. It's very different with what we would believe in the Western world. If you look at who is online right now in China, is this. That's the penetration rates. I think this diagram shows a good story as well. So who is online? So first, they are first-tier cities around the coastal area, but also some of the second-tier cities perform quite well, particularly in Shandong province, some of Chongqing as well, in the middle of China. So that's national average penetration rate is only 48%, which means that they haven't even started.
That's right.
And compared with some countries like US, and the penetration rates is over 90%.
Yes.
This have in the next 10 years, I would personally think that the e-commerce figure going to double it.
Yes,
for China.
Almost certainly.
Yeah.
And just for those people who may not be familiar with China, why don't you just explain some of the regional differences that are highlighted in this map?
Yep. So as a marketer, we like to define China as tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, maybe tier 4, 5 cities. Yeah. So tier 1 city, we usually refer to Beijing, Guangzhou, Shanghai, Shenzhen. That's 4 cities that we call tier 1, which fully developed, and their penetration rates for internet is already over 80%. It's probably too expensive for you to enter as a SME. Yeah. And it's the tier 2 city, which usually means the capital city within the province, or the top tier city within certain other province. It's not necessarily the capital of the country. Very typically, they have over 20 million people within a city, or at least over 10 million population. So I think enter as a tier 2 city could be shortcuts for some of the SMEs.
Yes, and what's some of the differences in consumer behaviour between first tier and second tier? How do they differ?
Tier 1 city is, in terms of the consumption, like in terms of what they buy, there's no much difference.
Right.
All right. They're always looking for premium and safe food to eat, and the demand are the same. But if you look at what we actually can get from the supermarket within the tier 2 city and tier 1, that's very different.
Right.
So if you go to Shanghai shopping mall, you pretty much like going to a supermarket in Australia or in US. It's not much different. But in tier 2 city or even tier 3, particularly tier 3 cities, you can hardly find some of the overseas products.
So they have to go online to get them.
Exactly, they have to online, and that's. I spoke to Alibaba, and they said it's surprisingly that the most of the sales on Tmall actually is from tier 2 and tier 3 cities, because they tend to buy more expensive purchase, spend more money online. Right. Because they have less access to the market, I guess.
Yeah, which is very significant, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. So now let's talk about the consumers. And we often talk about Chinese families and the way that they organize themselves in terms of purchasing.
Yeah.
And we've got quite an interesting picture to show you in a minute. But before we do, let's talk about some of the key aspects of an e-commerce strategy in China.
Yeah, I think that's it's not different. China is still, I mean, if you think about Australia or New Zealand or US, it's the same. You always need a website. So a website means that it's a brand, it's your own channel, and it's where you want to build the direct communication to your consumer.
Right.
E-marketplaces such as eBay, for example. Well, China doesn't have, very small penetration rate of eBay, but in a way that e-marketplaces is very much just for acquisition, for transactions.
Yeah.
So people wouldn't go to Taobao or Tmall to look in your brand story. They just wanted to looking for bargains and they just want to buy.
Yeah.
Again, so the social channels is very much for retention. They want to talk to the brands, and they can still purchase from the social market, social channel, but if you look at the conversion rate and the transaction amount, it's not that significant. So when that's what we call the 3 circles. So when you ideally you should build these 3 channels in your digital strategy, but you don't have to do it in one go.
No.
You can start from building an official website, or you can enter as a Tmall global store, for example.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else to say about that? Acquisition, retention, other parts to that?
So the official side is branding. So it's more for your brand awareness.
Yeah, good. So let's talk about the consumers who are online. Firstly, there's an enormous number, like 650 million online consumers in China. It's as big as that, isn't it? And growing very fast.
It is. But if you look at how much money they actually earn per month as a salary, within that 600 million people, there are only 5.7% earn 8,000 RMB per month as salary. So which means that 5.7% is your real target as a middle class.
Yeah.
However, the family structure, which I'm going to show you the next slide, we call them one child with 6 pockets. I think this is my story. That's a very typical one child family. So when I was born in late 1980s, so my parents, when they get married, and their salary is about $40 per month, 40 RMB per month.
Wow.
And they don't have TV. For the most of Chinese family, the first TV started in 1992.
Wow.
And fridge, you have to queue up to buy fridge, and you have to use the access, the economy back then in 1970s is terrible.
Yeah.
That's why when the parents get a kids, which is one child policy in 1980s, and we are always talking about all the family money and goes to the education for that post 80s. But what's happened now is the post 80 generation got the kids as well. So that's the post 2010, it's become the 6 pocket. So everyone's money goes to the grandchildren.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you think about it, with your wife and you from the same one child family, and when you get married, and then the kids actually is only grandchildren.
Yeah.
And that's why they can afford baby formula when their income is lower than 5,000 RMB per month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one child, 6 adults, basically pouring money into that one child. That's a very different kind of scenario to most countries in the world.
That's right.
Yeah, wow. So what about platforms? Now, in the West, we're used to Google and Facebook and eBay and Twitter.
Yeah.
So what about in China? What are the different sorts of names we need to start getting used to?
Well, the one thing we have to realize is China, from an internet perspective, they are isolated from the rest of the world. So there's no Google, no Facebook, no Twitter, no YouTube, things that you're using every day. Chinese just doesn't have that.
Right.
Well, partly to do with the censorship, but also to do with internet speed. So some of the even news website would have a very slow loading speed. So it's isolated, the whole country, from the internet perspective.
To continue enjoying this presentation, download BRiN, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit BRiN.ai or search the App Store today.